Many of you may have heard me say, I do believe that Donald Trump is an unserious man. And the consequences of him ever getting back into the White House are brutally serious. Brutally serious. So on that point about concepts of a plan, it's funny. We thought it was ridiculously hilarious when we first heard it. But here's the thing about that. He is basically going to threaten the health insurance of 45 million people based on a concept. And take us back to when insurance companies could deny people with pre-existing conditions? You remember what that was like? Well, we are not going back. We are not going back.
All right, folks. Your locked-in Adam is here. Kamala Harris delivered a surgical takedown of Trump on live television, calling him unserious but warning of the serious consequences of his return, tying him to January 6th, Project 2025, authoritarian tendencies and broken promises on abortion and the economy. The speech left Trump visibly unhinged in real time. The audience response was absolutely electric. We are talking about thunderous applause that kept erupting throughout the speech, standing ovations that interrupted her multiple times. The crowd was roaring with approval at so many moments that she had to pause just to let the applause die down before continuing. It was the kind of reception that politicians rarely get outside of their own convention halls. Pundits across the political spectrum were saying the same thing afterward. When it was all over, she looked presidential. She looked strong, confident, and completely in control of the moment. She made Trump look like what he actually is, a wannabe dictator who is more interested in settling scores with his enemies and critics than actually helping regular Americans with the real problems they face every single day.
Just imagine Donald Trump with no guardrails. And how he would use the immense powers of the presidency of the United States. Not to improve your life, not to strengthen our national security, but to serve the only client he has ever had, himself. And we know what a second Trump term would look like. It's all laid out in Project 2025, written by his closest advisors. And its sum total is to pull our country back to the past. But America, we are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back.
And then something extraordinary happened. Harris finished her speech, walked off stage to more thunderous applause, and Trump absolutely lost his mind. I am not exaggerating when I say it was a complete and total meltdown that played out in real time for the entire country to see. He immediately started rage posting on Truth Social. And we are not talking about a couple of posts here and there. We are talking about more than 40 posts in a very short period of time. Some of them were rambling and incoherent. Some of them were complaining about things that made absolutely no sense. He was posting things like asking if she was talking about him when she mentioned the armed mob that attacked the Capitol. Yes, Trump. She was talking about you and the armed mob you sent to the Capitol on January 6th. That is exactly who she was talking about.
On to this, Kamala Harris admitting in her new book, President Trump actually treated her nicely when she dealt with him one-on-one.
There's this New York Times excerpt of Kamala Harris's book. She writes that in private, you were very nice to her. And she says that on the phone, you called her a tough, smart customer. Did that happen?
Not that I know of, but I was nice to her. I met her a couple of times, and I was always nice to her. I thought Kamala would have done a better job than she did in terms of running, because we really won by a lot, and I thought she would have done better.
Senior White House correspondent and host of the brand new show, The Sunday Briefing, Peter Doocy, joins us now. Great to see you, Peter. You know, this book is kind of making the rounds right now, and it has really sort of split wide open some of the fractures within the Democrat Party.
But it got even crazier from there. Trump then called into Fox News. This was supposed to be his moment to respond to Harris and give his side of the story. This was supposed to be his chance to pivot and look presidential and effectively counter her messaging. Instead, he got so angry on the call that people watching could literally hear him mashing his phone buttons in frustration. The sound of his fingers hitting buttons repeatedly was audible on live television while he was ranting. The audio was captured on the broadcast. Millions of people heard it. And what was he ranting about? He was claiming that 70% of Americans are living in poverty. That is completely false. It is not accurate. It is not even close to what the actual statistics show. The real poverty rate is nowhere near 70%. He was just making up numbers because he was so angry he could not think straight. Then he claimed that Kamala Harris went to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin. She never did that. That never happened. That is a complete fabrication that he invented on the spot because he was so enraged that he could not control what he was saying.
Former US President Donald Trump recently linked Russia's invasion of Ukraine to Vice President Kamala Harris's visit to Europe in February 2022. Here's the context.
Remember when Biden sent Kamala to Europe to stop the war in Ukraine, she met with Putin, and then 3 days later he attacked. How did she do? You think she did a good job? She met with Putin to tell him don't do it, and 3 days later he attacked. That's when the attack started. Did you know that, General? Should have sent you.
In February 2022, as nearly 200,000 Russian troops gathered near to Ukraine, Harris was sent to Europe to address the looming crisis. During her trip, she met with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the Munich Security Conference, not with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who wasn't at the conference. A Kremlin spokesman confirmed last month that there has never been any contact between Harris and Putin, according to a state-owned Russian news agency. According to Time, Harris's visit aimed to rally European support and prepare for a coordinated response. However, Zelensky's request for preemptive sanctions and advanced weaponry were not accommodated.
He was just making stuff up to attack her because he was so angry that he had lost control of his own narrative. And then came the moment that really showed how badly this had gone for him. Fox News, which is supposed to be his safe space, his friendly network where he can go and get sympathetic treatment, had to immediately fact-check him on air. Brian Kilmeade, who was hosting the call, had to literally tell the audience that there was no confirmation Harris ever met with Putin. He had to explain that Harris actually met with allies at the Munich Security Conference, including Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, who is fighting against Russia and Putin. So, Trump was completely wrong on the facts. Fox News had to correct him. His own network had to tell viewers that Trump was lying. And this is the key moment right here. This is what matters for the election. Trump cannot go on television and make a simple political argument without getting fact-checked by Fox News. His own network has to correct his false claims, and he is so angry and incoherent while making them that he is mashing his phone buttons loud enough that people can hear it on the broadcast. The audio was captured. Everyone heard it. That is how out of control he was in that moment. The contrast could not be starker if they had tried to create it intentionally for a movie. You have got Harris on one side delivering a controlled, sharp, well-structured argument about Trump being a threat to democracy. You have got crowds applauding throughout. You have got pundits writing that she was excellent and hit all the right notes. You have got her looking calm and collected and presidential while she is demolishing Trump's record and his plans. And then, you have got Trump on the other side, rage posting 40 times like he is having a breakdown on social media, calling into Fox News incoherent and angry and yelling, mashing his phone buttons so hard people can hear it, getting fact-checked by his own allies because he is making false claims about Putin and poverty statistics that are completely wrong. It is almost like they cast this scenario as a movie to show the difference between these two candidates. And you know what voters saw when they watched this unfold? Especially swing voters who are still deciding, especially soft Republicans who watch Fox News for their news. They saw Harris looking strong and presidential and in control. They saw Trump looking weak and desperate and not telling the truth. They saw Fox News having to correct him on basic facts in real time. They saw him having a meltdown instead of a measured and thoughtful response. That is the political impact right there. That is what matters moving forward. For months, Trump has been saying that Harris is not ready for the job, that she is not serious, that she is just a political operative who got picked by Biden without winning anything, that she is not the real deal. And then Harris comes out and proves on live television that she is way more serious and way more capable and way more controlled and way more focused than Trump is. She made a solid argument. She stayed on message. He had a complete meltdown. The narrative flipped instantly. Suddenly, everyone is talking about Trump being the unserious one, Trump being the one who cannot keep his emotions in check, Trump being the one who makes things up out of nowhere and gets fact-checked on television by his own network. That is a huge problem for him, going into the final stretch of this election. That narrative is going to haunt him. Now, let me dig deep into what Harris actually said, because the specifics matter here. She did not just go on stage and insult Trump. She made a strategic, carefully constructed argument designed to shift fundamentally how people think about him and his presidency going forward. Harris started by saying something really simple, but really powerful. She said that in many ways Donald Trump is an unserious man, but the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious. That is the frame right there. That is the key messaging. Trump is unserious as a person. His potential presidency is serious and dangerous because it threatens democracy and freedom. It is a brilliant rhetorical move because it acknowledges that Trump is kind of a clown and a joke on some level. But it also says, do not make the mistake of thinking that means his presidency would be a joke. His presidency would be extremely dangerous and consequential. People can laugh at him as a person while still taking seriously the threat he poses as president. Then she broke down exactly why she thinks he is dangerous and what people should be worried about. She talked about January 6th directly. She said Trump sent an armed mob to the Capitol. She did not just say that people showed up that day and things got out of hand. She said Trump sent them. She tied him directly to what happened that day. She made the argument that he bears responsibility for the attack on the Capitol. And she made the argument that he is a threat to democracy itself, not because he said something controversial or had unpopular policies, but because he refused to accept the results of an election and mobilized his supporters to attack the Capitol building. That is anti-democratic. That is authoritarian. That is what happens in countries where democracy collapses. Then she pivoted to Project 2025 in her speech. For people who have not been following all the details closely, Project 2025 is basically the comprehensive blueprint for what Trump plans to do if he wins the presidency again. It is written by his allies and conservative groups. It includes mass deportations and separating immigrant families. It includes taking away reproductive rights and banning abortion nationally. It includes gutting Social Security and Medicare that seniors depend on. It includes a lot of really unpopular stuff that Trump tried to hide from voters because he knows it is deeply unpopular. Harris brought that up directly in her speech. She said to just imagine Donald Trump with no guardrails, no Congress checking him, no Supreme Court keeping him in line, just Trump with total power to do whatever he wants. And she connected that directly to Project 2025 and his promises of retribution and revenge against his enemies. She made the argument that he is going to come after his enemies and opponents, that he is going to use the government as a tool to punish people who criticize him, that he is going to weaponize the Justice Department against his political opponents. That is a fundamental threat to democracy and the rule of law. And she did all of this while literally wrapping herself in the American flag. She was standing there with the flag as a backdrop behind her. She was talking about American history and American values throughout. She was talking about democracy and freedom and what it means to be American. She was presenting herself as the defender of American values and institutions against Trump and his authoritarian plans. That is strategic messaging done really well. That is designed to shift the conversation fundamentally, from policy specifics to something bigger and more fundamental. It is about values. It is about democracy. It is about whether you want a president who respects the Constitution and the rule of law, or one who is going to turn the government into a tool for personal revenge and retribution. Then Harris started hitting him on specifics and his record. She talked about his record on the economy and jobs. She talked about his promises on healthcare that never materialized, and how people are still struggling to afford medications and insurance. She talked about his plans to ban abortion nationally and take away women's right to make their own healthcare decisions. She connected all of these things to the idea that he is obsessed with his own grievances and his enemies, instead of actually helping regular people with their real problems. One thing Harris has been doing really well and consistently across multiple appearances is connecting Trump's personal vanity and self-centeredness directly to his failures as a leader. She did it on the Jon Stewart podcast, where she talked about his plan to build a huge new ballroom at the White House for his wealthy friends, a luxury gold-plated ballroom. And meanwhile, SNAP benefits are expiring. People cannot afford food. Families are choosing between paying rent and buying groceries. But Trump wants to spend money on a gold-plated ballroom for his rich buddies. She even used explicit language about it on that podcast. She was so frustrated and angry about the disconnect that she said, "Are you kidding me?" Because that is the fundamental disconnect right there. Trump cares about his own vanity projects. Regular Americans care about whether their kids can eat, whether they can afford health care, whether they have a job that pays enough to live on, whether their rights are respected. So Harris has been building this argument across multiple platforms. She has been saying consistently that Trump is self-centered. He is obsessed with revenge and punishment and settling scores. He is obsessed with his own image and his own comfort and his own legacy. He is not focused on you. He is not focused on helping the middle class. He is focused on himself and his own grievances and his own enemies. And that is exactly why her speech landed so hard and resonated so much with audiences. Because she delivered that entire argument in one concentrated dose on live television with an audience and dramatic staging and historic context. She made it feel big. She made it feel consequential. She made it feel like this election is about something fundamental and important for the future of the country. Then Trump's response was to completely prove her point about him in real time. She says he is unserious and obsessed with himself and his own grievances. Then he rage posts 40 times about what she said. He complains about her saying thank you too many times in her speech. Like, dude, she is taking you apart and making serious arguments about democracy, and your response is that she was overly polite. That is unserious. Then he goes on Fox News, and instead of making a coherent counter-argument and rebutting her points, he rants about poverty statistics that are completely made up. He invents stories about Harris meeting with Putin that never happened. He gets so angry he cannot control himself. He is incoherent. He is not focused. He is just angry and defensive and lying. And here is what really matters for the election going forward. This happened in real time. This happened on live television. Millions of people saw it. They saw Harris looking calm and in control and presidential. They saw Trump looking frantic and out of control and unhinged. They saw Fox News fact-checking him. They saw the gap between her message and his response. For swing voters, this is exactly what they are worried about. They are worried that Trump is too impulsive and unstable, that he cannot control his emotions, that he will say things that are not true and spread misinformation, that he will get distracted by personal grievances and vendettas instead of focusing on regular people's problems. And Harris just gave them a live demonstration of all of those concerns being validated in real time on television. So let me break down what actually happened here and why it is going to matter for the rest of this election. This is a big moment that changes the dynamic. Number one is the messaging shift. For weeks now, Trump has been saying Kamala Harris is weak. She is inexperienced. She is just a political operative who got picked by Biden. She is not ready. She did not win a primary. She is not the real deal. He has been hammering that message over and over again at rallies. And then Harris goes on stage and just completely demolishes him on live television for everyone to see. She makes a serious, well-structured argument about his record and his plans. She connects him directly to January 6th and the Capitol attack. She talks about his revenge plans and his enemies list. She connects it all to Project 2025 and what it means for regular Americans. She explains why she thinks he is dangerous, and she does it in a way that sounds credible and presidential. So suddenly the narrative flips completely. Now everyone is talking about how sharp Harris is, how focused she is, how much better she performed compared to Trump. The media is writing about how she is finding her voice, how she is more confident, how she is making a clear case against Trump that is resonating with voters. That is a huge deal because narratives matter tremendously in politics. If people believe Harris is the serious candidate and Trump is unserious, that changes how they evaluate everything going forward. They will judge his statements by that lens. They will judge his behavior by that lens. When he does something impulsive or says something that is not true, people will think, well, that is what Harris said about him. That is the unserious guy she was talking about. Number two is the fact-checking moment on Fox News. This is absolutely critical for understanding the impact. Trump called into Fox News, which is supposed to be his safe space and friendly territory. It is the network that generally treats him more favorably than other networks. It is where he should be able to go and make his arguments and have him treated sympathetically without aggressive questioning. But instead, Brian Kilmeade has to immediately fact-check him on air in front of millions of viewers. Trump claims Harris went to Russia to meet Putin. That is not true. That never happened. And Kilmeade has to say so on live television. He has to tell the audience that Trump is wrong. He has to correct the record directly. Now, for a lot of voters, especially swing voters and older voters who get their news from Fox, that moment is really significant and carries real weight. They trust Fox. They think of it as the place where they get the real story that the mainstream media is hiding. And when Fox has to fact-check Trump, it carries enormous weight. It says even the network that is friendly to Trump has to tell him he is wrong on this one. And it is not like it is a complicated or nuanced fact-check that people can argue about. It is not like Kilmeade is splitting hairs about some policy disagreement or economic projection. He is saying she did not meet with Putin. That is false. That did not happen. It is a basic factual claim that Trump got completely wrong. That undermines Trump's credibility in a serious way. It makes people wonder, well, if he is wrong about that, what else is he wrong about? If he is making stuff up about Harris and Putin, maybe he is not telling me the truth about other things either. Maybe I cannot trust what he is saying about the economy or immigration or healthcare. It is a credibility disaster. The contrast in demeanor between the two of them. Harris delivered her speech calmly and carefully. She was focused, she was controlled, she made her arguments clearly, she got applause, she looked comfortable on stage. She looked like someone who knows what she is doing and has prepared thoroughly. Trump got so angry he was mashing his phone buttons on a live call with Fox News. He was incoherent and hard to follow. He was yelling. He was making false claims that had no basis in reality. He was not focused. He was not controlled. He was having an emotional reaction instead of a measured and thoughtful response. For voters who are worried about Trump's temperament and stability, that is exactly the validation they needed for their concerns. They are worried he is too impulsive and unpredictable. They are worried he cannot control his emotions. They are worried he will say things that are not true. And then he goes on live television and demonstrates all of that in real time for millions of people to see. The phone button mashing thing is actually important symbolically and practically. It shows that he is so angry he cannot even operate his own phone correctly. He is so out of control that he is physically smashing buttons repeatedly. It is almost a visual representation of him being unhinged and out of control. And millions of people heard it on the Fox News broadcast. The strategy behind what Harris did. This was not random or spontaneous. Harris has been very deliberately using Trump's own words against him throughout the campaign. The Wall Street Journal reported on her strategy to focus on his own clips and his own statements. She has been putting together montages of him saying things like, "My enemies from within," things he said at rallies that make him sound like he is obsessed with revenge and punishment. That is a smart strategy because it is not her attacking him or making accusations. It is him attacking himself with his own words and his own statements. She can just show what he said and let people make up their own minds. And he cannot really argue with his own words. He cannot say, "Well, I never said that," because there is video of him saying it at rallies. The ballroom comment is another example of this strategy in action. Harris is taking his actual plans and showing how they conflict with normal people's real needs. He wants to spend money on a luxury ballroom at the White House for rich friends. People want to be able to feed their families and afford health care. That is not Harris making something up or exaggerating. That is Trump's actual plan and his actual priorities on display. So, the strategy is working incredibly well. It is getting under Trump's skin so much that he is melting down and making mistakes. He is making false claims. He is getting fact-checked by his own network. He is validating everything Harris is saying about him being unserious and impulsive and focused on himself instead of regular people. Number 5 is what comes next and what this means for the election. This is a moment that is going to ripple through the rest of the campaign. The clip of Harris delivering that powerful speech is going to be replayed constantly. It is going to be shared across social media. It is going to be used in advertisements. Swing voters who did not see it live are going to see it multiple times. The clip of Trump melting down and getting fact-checked is also going to circulate widely. People are going to see a candidate who is so angry and unstable that he is not thinking clearly, who is making things up out of thin air, who is getting corrected by Fox News, his own friendly network. That is not a good look for him. Harris has found something that is working really well. She has found a way to frame Trump as dangerous and unserious. And then Trump's reaction proves her right every single time. Every time he responds to her with anger and false claims and incoherent ranting, he is validating her message about him. For the rest of this campaign, we are probably going to see Harris continue with this exact strategy. She is going to make sharp arguments about Trump's record and his plans. She is going to use his own words against him. She is going to try to get under his skin so he responds emotionally and makes mistakes and says things that hurt him. And if Trump keeps responding the way he did after this speech with rage posts and false claims and incoherent ranting on television, then Harris is going to keep winning this battle. She is going to look more presidential. He is going to look more unhinged and desperate. That is the trajectory right now. That is what this moment represents. It is a shift in how people are evaluating both of these candidates. Harris is looking more serious and more capable. Trump is looking more desperate and more out of control. And that is the opposite of what he needs right now in this election. The contrast between the two moments was so stark that it almost felt like it was staged for maximum effect. Harris on the stage with the flag behind her, delivering a devastating critique of Trump's record and plans, receiving thunderous applause from an enthusiastic crowd. Then Trump, alone in whatever room he was in, rage posting on social media, calling into Fox News and incoherently ranting while mashing his phone buttons, getting fact-checked by the very network that is supposed to be on his side. It was like watching two different realities playing out simultaneously. One candidate looked like someone who could handle the pressures of the presidency. The other looked like someone who could not even handle a political speech without completely losing control. Harris made a compelling presidential case steady, focused on rule of law and helping Americans, while Trump responded with a meltdown, false claims, fact checks, and rage posts. The contrast defined the campaign. One looked ready to lead, the other unhinged.